Okay, welcome to Learning Module number 10's review of key concepts. Okay, so we started with capital budgeting, and some of the keys there, we need to decide what to capitalize based on our own individual time threshold and cost threshold. So every nonprofit has to figure out what they're going to capitalize. You know, $1,000, $5,000, things that last over 1 year, things that last over 3 years. It's individualized to each nonprofit. We also need to understand that there is a relationship between our capital and our operating budgets. They are separate, so we're going to have a separate capital budget that's going to basically list all of our expenses, sometimes our revenue. But what we do on the capital side can affect what we do on the operating side. So if we're raising a bunch of capital money, that might affect how much money we're able to raise for operating. And if we are purchasing big things from a capital perspective, it may mean that we're actually increasing our operating expenses as well. Okay, next up we took a look at life cycle costing. And so that is when we're trying to decide how to purchase or which asset to purchase. It's not enough just to look at what we're paying. We have to look at the true cost of ownership. And so you can see the equation that we use there. We have to, of course, look at what it costs us to get the asset, right? Our acquisition costs. But sometimes, especially, with buildings or with vans and things like that, you are going to see different costs throughout the life of the asset. So you have to add the acquisition costs plus the operating costs that you're going to pay every year, plus any maintenance costs, plus any disposal costs, which would be, if you have to get rid of when you go to get rid of the asset, does it cost you to haul it away? Does it cost you to store it? What is the likelihood that you'd be able to resell it? That sort of thing. Next up, when we're talking about capital financing, so how we're going to get the money to purchase our asset, essentially there's two types. We have equity financing and debt financing. Equity financing is when we're going to figure it out on our own. So we're going to take money from somewhere within our organization. We're not going to purchase it until we raise the money, that sort of thing. Debt financing is when we're going to look at a loan. Maybe if we're a really large organization, we might look at floating a bond. Depending upon what type of organization we are, depending upon what type of asset we're purchasing and how big it is, we may have to look at one or the other of these types of financing. Okay, and finally we looked at capital structure, which is a little bit different than capital budgeting. And this is where we have to understand what our unique capital structure is for our organization. So we have to understand, whether we're cash heavy or whether we run close to the bone. We have to understand whether we often have a lot of receivables and when do they come in, or, are we kind of a cash only organization? We have to look at, do we have a lot of equipment, physical plant? Are we heavy, for example? How easy is it for us to make big changes is a good question to ask when you're looking at capital structure. If we have a lot of physical plant, so if we have big buildings and we have a lot of land and we have a lot of heavy equipment, well then we would call ourselves quote unquote heavy, meaning that we're probably going to be slower in terms of moving or changing or growing because we do have all these assets. If we don't have a lot of equipment, if we are, a little lighter perhaps, maybe we don't have a ton of staff, maybe we use contractors, then we might be a little more nimble and able to respond to changes in the environment, changes in the economy, changes in, opportunity, or be able to take advantage of opportunities that come our way. So understanding our own unique capital structure is really important to understanding, the link between our capital budgets, our operating budgets, and our plan for growth in the future. So when you're ready, you can go on to the Test Yourself module.